Okay, so in the continuing saga of my Server 2016 Hyper-V server build, I hit a bit of a snag, which is I think that the ISO I was using had somehow gotten corrupt. I tried twice and never got it this far. It would tell me that, hey, the files are corrupt, I can't continue, so I've had to restart the install process a couple of times. I discovered along the way how to, and now the reason I know that this file is corrupt, beyond the fact that it just kind of didn't do its thing, was, let me pull this over. So, this, I decided to try to checksum the ISO file. Remember from your from what you've heard in other classes about CRCs, cyclical redundancy checks, hashes, checksums, that kind of thing. I did an SHA-256 hash on two different versions of the same file. I have them in two different places so I don't mess up the file name. And obviously, these two files are very, very different from each other. They are the same size, exactly the same size, but they are not the same file. And this one is working and the other one isn't. How I did that, and I would like to show you that right quick. Let me go over, drag this over here. So this is my big repository of ISOs on my external hard drive. What I did, first I go into my dodgy directory, right-click that, do CRCSH, and I chose that. And I copied and pasted that into Notepad++, which is one of my favorite text editors in a Windows environment. Yeah, and then I did precisely the same thing on the new ISO, which I actually pulled down off of our Google Drive. So it's the same file, in theory, but in point of fact, because these two SHA hashes are very, very different from each other, they are very much not the same file. So yeah, just wanted to show you that. You could install a checksum app of some kind on the Microsoft Store or get freeware or whatnot, but I don't want to sign into the Microsoft Store. And I don't want to just grab a download off the net, not even on a relatively trustworthy place like cnet.com. Now, there are tools inside Linux to do this quite easily. You might have to dig a little, or just use the OS and the tools it has for you. So now I'm going to pause this and do some of this stuff up. One of the things you'll do on your Windows Server 16 system is set the admin account. Then what you should do is create another account with local admin privileges, so that you don't do anything as admin. Whether you disable the admin account or not, it may be kind of a question of standard operating procedure for your agency and location. I've heard of places that do it both ways, either that they do not shut the admin account down, or that they do and they create another account not named admin for the sake of doing administrative stuff. So I'm going to pause this for now and we'll keep going because I really do want to demonstrate turning on the Hyper-V server role. Now, in chapter 5, we'll turn on the Hyper-V server role. In chapter 6, we'll set the thing up for System Center and VMM. You can have the Hyper-V role on a standalone machine. In System Center, you need to be tied into a domain. So we'll go from there. And again, if you remember, if you need some trouble, if you're having some trouble with some of this stuff, just go back and look at your server book, your notes from your server class, or talk to an instructor, or maybe get some old instructions out of a Moodle course you've already taken. So we'll be right back. Oh, so it occurred to me, maybe you haven't done this in a while. There's some things you need to do before you even start thinking about roles and features. One of them is give this silly thing an interesting name. Obviously, when 3IK blah 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 blah. That's not useful to anyone. I don't want to see that when I add this in the DNS scope for my Active Directory integrated DNS. I also need to change the time zone because everything. Remember, Active Directory works with Kerberos. Kerberos needs time synchronization. Put these things in the same time zone because everything else is in my central time zone. So I'm going to leave it there. Okay. Now some of these things will change. Now one of the other things you're going to want to do, and again here we see the device knows that it is VMware. It knows it's got 8 gigs of memory. It knows it has a couple of processors. I'm not going to put it in a domain yet. I'm not going to give it a static IP address yet. I will do that eventually. So I'm going to have to move it into, after I get everything downloaded to it correctly. Then and only then will I move it. Because right now, if I move it into the right LAN segment and subnet and statically address it, if it's going to be a domain controller, it needs to have a static address. Honestly, if it's going to be a server of any kind, it needs to have a static address. So I'm going to change this name. I'm going to call this SRV 2K12 SYS CTR. Now, don't get too goofy with these names. NetBIOS, because there are bits and pieces of the old network NetBUI network basic input output system NetBIOS and NetBUI NetBIOS extended user interface even in modern Windows Windows NT. This thing is going to want a username that is a system name which is less than 15 characters long. So don't go nuts here. So click OK. And I'm going to wait for a second. And then I'm going to have to reboot this thing. And that is okay. It is all right to just do things slowly for now. We'll have to probably reboot it again when we move it into the domain. But we're not going to do that right now. Restart now. Now, one of the other things I'm going to want to do in my VM settings, and I could actually go ahead and install VMware Tools here right now. I'm going to turn my snapshots on. I want it to be in Ask Me mode. I'm probably also going to go ahead and turn on VMware Tools. We're actually going to deal with something like this once we get Hyper-V installed. What Hyper-V what VMware calls VMware Tools and VirtualBox calls Guest Editions, I believe Hyper-V calls Integration Services. Essentially a lot of the same concepts. So I'm going to click my button. I also need to add a user for myself because I don't really like doing much of anything as admin or as root. What you really ought to do for the sake of controlling your environment is set up another account which has those levels of privilege and then sudo or use a non-administrative account. And of course, okay, so I've got my license valid for 30 days. I can see that. So it's not gonna fight me on licensing or anything like that. It's one of the reasons I chose this particular edition, because I don't have to fight it with anything, because it's valid right off the bat. The next thing I'm going to do is create some accounts for myself, and we'll do the Hyper-V role in the next video.